One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of HBO's House of the Dragon, entitled Second of His Name. The title, even though it seemingly refers to Aegon, who was born off screen, we don't see too much of Aegon in this episode, but Aegon's presence kind of looms over this episode. So I can understand the naming of the episode being the second of his name because, Aegon the Conqueror has a reputation that preceded him. So for this kid to also be named Aegon, big shoes to fill. But then also now we have the complicated issue that we need to work through regarding who's going to be heir to the Iron Throne. So we time jump in this episode yet again. This time we could time jump 3 years. And before I get started, I do want to point out that this episode, while it was kind of your standard, kind of like Game of Thrones episode where there's not a ton of action, there's a lot of talking, but what gets conveyed is important to help understand characters and situations so that when things really start to pop off later, we have a better understanding of why and what happened that caused people to act the way that they do once things start to go left. And this is very much one of those episodes where you listen to these conversations, you learn where these characters' heads are at, and then you will now understand why they're going to behave the way that they're going to behave later. And I have some thoughts and some theories as well. But I did have a couple of issues, and I'll talk about them when I get to them. But probably my least favorite of the three that we've had so far. Still your standard enjoyable Game of Thrones-esque watch. I just had a couple of issues, but we'll get to those. So like I said, we time jump 3 years, and it's now Aegon's second birthday. So last episode, Alicent was pregnant, and now the kid's 2 years old. And now she's also pregnant again. Wait, was Alicent pregnant in the last episode? Or they just, I think they were just talking about possibly her marrying Viserys. I don't know if she was actually pregnant in that episode, but that would make sense. The 3 years, 9 months with the pregnancy, and now the kid's 2, so it makes sense it had been 3 years. And I think my first issue here revolves around the time jumps, and the time jumps actually don't bother me at all. There's just things that when you have a time jump, especially one of this length, I think you have to be very careful about how you convey what happened during that time jump, because it could throw people's equilibrium off a little bit, I think, if you don't really specify, okay, this happened at this point. Now, if you have something like, again, Aegon being born, you don't really need to explain that because, okay, it's his second name day, so I know he's 9 months pregnant. It adds up to essentially 3 years. That makes sense. But my first issue with the time jump here, my first issue revolves around this time jump, is I just felt it was a little, not even unclear, but I would have liked more information on what was going on during the 3 years in between the end of the last episode and the start of this one as it pertains to Daemon and Corlys. So we start the episode and we see Daemon kind of running roughshod over the crab feeder and all his people. It's actually a pretty funny scene where the guy is saying, "Hail Prince Daemon," and then Syraxes just like steps on the guy. But that was kind of funny. But Daemon's come through and he's kicking everybody's ass. Dracarys all over the place. The crab feeder and his people retreat into a cave, and it kind of seems like Daemon's doing a pretty good job. And then that's when we move to the next scene and we find out about the time jump and that it's been 3 years. And then it makes me wonder, okay, so when did the previous scene happen? So like we ended the last scene with Corlys going to Daemon to ask for help with this whole situation. Did they go there right away? And then it's been 3 years since, like that scene with Daemon specifically, was that 3 years ago? And now it's been going on for 3 years, and now we're at that point where, it's Aegon's second name day, and it's just been 3 years since that event? Or did that event just happen, and there was 3 years between the end of last episode and that event? And in that case, did Daemon wait 3 years to help? Have they been battling for 3 years and that was just a arbitrary moment in time that we got to see? And it's just like that kind of not being able to place myself time-wise, it just irks me a little bit. And I would like to know when that scene took place, because it's important when that scene took place, at least to me, because we hear verbally that Daemon and Corlys are losing this war. And when you see that specific scene, and you know who you know Daemon and his reputation, you know that they have dragons, how the fuck are they losing? And so it's like, I don't want to just hear that they're losing, especially when hearing that they're losing directly contradicts what I saw. So then now I need to know even more where to place that scene. Like, was that scene at the beginning of this 3-year time period, and then they were you know, everything kind of went south after that? And if that, my impression was that scene had just happened. Like, that was like, you know, like the day before, something like that, recent. But if that was the most recent activity in that war, how do that doesn't look like they're losing to me. So, like, it's weird to kind of just place that scene within that 3-year time gap. And I think that's the kind of stuff that if you're going to do these time jumps, and I do think they're going to end at one point once we get to the Dance of the Dragons, we're probably going to stop having these massive time jumps. But, you know, when you have these time jumps, if you want to place an event, a major event, in between there, especially if that event is tied into how we're going to perceive the direction of this war and who's winning, you know, you got to be a little bit more clear with that, because I didn't see anything that suggested that Daemon and Corlys were losing this war. I only heard it verbally, and then what I saw certainly didn't suggest that. I still can't, even though they tried to explain how they're losing, it's still kind of like, I don't know if I buy this. Like, they got dragons on deck. Like, I don't know how the crab feeder, who the crab feeder is weaponless aside from crabs. I don't know how his people have managed to win this war, even though they are winning this war. Well, were winning this war, even though, yeah, he didn't look like he was winning it to me. So we also deal with in this episode, I think, a lot of inner turmoil when it comes to Rhaenyra, Alicent, and Viserys. We have Rhaenyra versus Alicent, kind of, and expected, right? You know, your friend marries your father. you're not gonna be in good shape. And then not only does your friend marry your father, but then she now gives birth to a boy that you think is gonna supplant you as heir. So now she's looking at her friend like, okay, you were my friend. Now you're like my mother, a stepmother / friend, and now you're giving birth to a kid that that's possibly gonna make it so that I am no longer heir to the throne. And I think there's a part of Rhaenyra that probably doesn't specifically care that much about not being queen. I think it's more about the gender dynamics at play here. Like, I think she's more offended at the idea of a boy being created because she's not good enough for the role, because she's a woman, and only because she's a woman. So you get that interesting dynamic there with those two. Then you also have her going at it with her father, because she's dealing, not only is she also questioning him, thinking that he's probably going to make Aegon the new heir as well, but just the general kind of lack of respect for women that she feels is coming from all different angles. And then you also have, and this is kind of like, I guess, throwing more wood onto the I don't like the way women are treated in Westeros kind of feel that Rhaenyra has. Viserys is trying to pair her up with someone to be married, and I don't. And again, I think with Rhaenyra, just like it's less about being on the Iron Throne and it's more about being supplanted because she's a woman, I think that she also doesn't really have issues with being married. She has issues with, because she's a woman, being told that she has to be married, being told who she has to be married to, having a motherfucker like Jason Lannister. Like, he sounds lame. And what is it with Lannisters and these really plain names? Like, we had Kevin Lannister in Game of Thrones. Now we have Jason Lannister and this. Like, what's the next Lannister we're going to get? Frank Lannister. Yeah, I think it's more about her not wanting to be told what to do, be told who she has to marry, say, hey, this is a fitting man for you. He can help you and all these sorts of, like, she doesn't want to deal with that. So I think she would want to get married. And Allison even says that. And like, I think she'll get married. She just doesn't want to be forced to. So she's dealing with that. But then you also have Viserys, and he's kind of butting heads with her as well, because he wants her to make all the right decisions. He has a great line. He says, even I'm not above loyalty and honor or duty or something like that. And I think that him, like he understands, I think, where she's coming from. But at the same time, it's just like teenage rebellion. Like, he makes a comment about, if he said that she couldn't marry a Lannister, she would have run off with Jason. Because he feels like everything she's doing is just to spite him. And I feel like it's a combination of both. I feel like there is a little bit of that. But I really do think it is mainly just Rhaenyra wanting to pave her own way and not being told this is what you have to do because you're a woman, or this is what you have to deal with because you're a woman. So him trying to pass all these different men off on her, and I say I exaggerate a little. He didn't try to pass all these different men off on her. But there's just open discussion throughout this episode about who Rhaenyra should be marrying. And he did make the point, like, I have tried to get your input, and you're not interested. But let's talk a little bit, before I get to my second issue with the episode, I do want to talk a little bit about the multiple suggestions for Rhaenyra to be married. So like the first I said, Jason Lannister, he kind of gives his own proposal to her, but then he also gives one to Viserys as well, when he offers like a spear with like a mop head on it. I don't know what the fuck that was. But he doesn't really have much of a case. But then we have Lord Strong, who always has the best suggestions, to the point where I don't know if I'm kind of wondering if I can trust Lord Strong. It's almost like he's too smart. Like, how does he always have the best advice? Like, I think it's just the Game of Thrones fan of me. It's like you always expect someone to betray someone else. And when you look at guys like Otto, it's pretty obvious Otto's a scumbag. So it's like, yeah, of course Otto's a scumbag. And Lord Strong seems like he's a great guy. He's giving like the perfect advice. And it's something in me that just goes, I don't know if I can trust him though. He's just too smart. Like Baelish, like Peter Baelish. Like, that's how Lord Strong feels to me. People are comparing Otto to Baelish, but Otto is just, I don't know, he's so outwardly, obviously up to no good. Whereas I feel like Lord Strong is sneaky like Baelish was. But he suggests Laenor Valerian, who is Corlys's son. And we see him, he's like younger, gray hair. There's a scene toward the end where we see, what's his name? Vaemond, who is Corlys's brother on the show, but I believe nephew in the book. But we see him, and he's the one who also sent the letter to Viserys asking for help. We see him, Corlys, and the son, Laenor. We'll call him Laenor. We see him as well. And Laenor is the one who rides in at the end on the Silver Dragon to save Daemon as well. So just to kind of like help place who these people are and what their relation is to one another. But Lord Strong suggests that Rhaenyra be wed to Laenor because it makes perfect sense. He's got Targaryen blood due to being the son of Corlys, which means he's also the son of Rhaenys. And it just makes sense. And he's like, I told you to marry the daughter a while back. So now for the same reason, I'm gonna tell you to have Rhaenyra marry the son. So he gives a great suggestion. Then Otto, in true piece of shit form, says, hey, I have an idea that you're going to love this one. Why don't we marry Rhaenyra to her 2-year-old brother? Like, I don't know when a boy is considered to have come of age in Westeros. Well, let's just say 13. The idea that Otto is suggesting this at 2, like, yeah, it'll calm down everybody asking about getting her hand. It's like, I get it, but geez, man, like it's his 2nd birthday, bro. He wasn't even 2 yesterday. Like, man, Otto's a piece of shit. So Rhaenyra, in a fit of rage, runs off on her horse, and she's followed by Criston Cole, and they end up in the woods, and they end up bonding. And I kind of hope that Criston Cole and Rhaenyra don't end up having a thing. I kind of feel like that's where it's going, but I don't really want that to happen because I like their relationship. It feels very much like a good, solid friendship that doesn't need to be ruined with ruined with a sexual component. But my second issue here is they get attacked by this boar, and the boar charges out of the woods, knocks over Kristen, starts trying to get at Rhaenyra, and he stabs it through the head, and the blade is like this close to Rhaenyra's face. And I'm like, okay, one, I don't think it's plausible, and implausibility is going to revolve around my third issue as well. I don't think it's plausible to purposely stop your sword at that point when plunging it through a boar's head. I don't think that's plausible, for one. And then for two, why would you stab it there? Like, it's too much of a risk to Rhaenyra. Like, why not come through the side of the body, and now Rhaenyra is safe and the boar is equally dead? But so I thought that was a little bit too much for me to buy. You know, like, okay, like you stopped your sword this close. Like, come on, man. Like, and why did you go through the head in the first place? So that didn't really work for me. But I like how after he does that, Rhaenyra goes crazy stabbing the boar herself, because, again, like, she's been dealing with a lot. Like, the idea of being supplanted by her brother, her younger brother, who is the son of her friend. You know, all of these things. And just a constant, this is how your life should go because you are a woman, when she wants to do something different. Very much, it's just like I said after episode 1, in my video for episode 1, she's very much like Arya. And I said Alicent very much felt like Sansa. Remains to be seen, but right now the Arya comparison with Rhaenyra is still pretty strong, I think. So Otto pushes Alicent to press Viserys to name Aegon the heir. And I think she went there with the intention of doing that, but she sees a letter on the table, asks who it's from. It's from Vaemond Valerian. And it's essentially his call for help. And instead of pressing Viserys to name Aegon heir, she instead presses him to send help to Daemon under the very simple statement: is the realm better off with the crab feeder or without him? Like, what benefits the realm most? Getting rid of the crab feeder or allowing him to do his thing? And that ends up convincing him. So we end up now we're heading into the final act of the episode. Everyone seems to be against Daemon at this point. Laenor is kind of on Daemon's side, but Vaemond. I have to keep looking at his name. Vaemond is very much anti-Daemon. Feel like this isn't working out. We don't have much time left before we're done. We can't trust Daemon anymore. Daemon returns. He gets a letter from Viserys saying that help is on the way. And I love this. The way we end up at this point, because they set it up earlier with Viserys being asked if Daemon asked for help, and he was like, he'd rather die than ask for help. And then Daemon gets the letter saying help is coming, and Daemon's like, no, fuck that. I'd rather die than get Daemon's like, I'd rather die than get help. So he decides to execute on the plan that they had kind of alluded to before Daemon arrived, which was to essentially send Daemon as bait to draw the crab feeder and all of his people out of the caves, and then they would finish the deed there. And so that's what it looks like Daemon starts to do. And my third issue here, there are archers that have the high ground on Daemon, and they're they're knocked, they're drawn, and they're ready to go. And as soon as Daemon decides that he's going to, he's presenting his sword like, okay, I'm surrendering here, and right before whoever this is about to grab it, Daemon changes his mind, starts going off. He should be dead. Like, at that point, he should be dead, because they had all those archers up there with the high ground, already drawn, already pointed at him. He should have been dead. And he takes off running. Everyone's missing. I'm like, okay, you just told me, when you showed me that Daemon was kicking ass on Syraxes, when in the scene where they stepped on that guy, you just showed me that it looks like they're pretty formidable as far as crab feeder opponents go. You just showed me they were pretty formidable, but you told me that they're losing this war. If they're that good, that they're winning this war despite the other team having dragons, how are the archers that shitty? Like, I feel like the archers should have been able, like, one of those guys should have been able to hit Daemon fairly easily. And Daemon does get hit. I think he takes 2 or 3 arrows toward the end, But by that point, I was already just like, okay, this is completely and entirely implausible. Because, like, even if you look at it as like, okay, this is like a story that's gonna go down in history for Daemon. Like, oh, just remember when Daemon Targaryen did blah 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 blah, and then he managed to avoid all these arrows, make it give him like almost like a godlike quality to him. And I get it, but again, there's so much at odds when we're talking about the result of this conflict. And like I said, the telling me that they're losing but showing me that they're winning. And you can't, on one hand, tell me that the Crab Feeders people are good enough to be beating a team that has dragons on it, but they're also not good enough to kill Daemon with their arrows already drawn and the high ground and waiting for him to do something. Like, he shouldn't have been able to get past that first guy when he faked out, handing over his sword. So, and then it's kind of like third issue B. Like, that was A, this is like B. The fact that they kept having everyone looking around like, oh, is there a dragon coming? Is there a dragon coming? And then everybody look around, no dragon, no dragon. Daemon's about to die, then the dragon's right there. Like, okay. Like, come on, bro. Like, does Laenor's dragon have like a stealth mode or something? I don't know. But so that's all I got for this episode. Like I said, it's a solid episode. I like when Game of Thrones has the conversations that help you understand characters and their motivations, and that kind of help you, unknowingly at the time, understand what's going to happen in the future and why people are going to behave the way that they behave, and watching these chess pieces get moved. I love all that kind of stuff out of Game of Thrones. But like I said, my 3 issues, the time jump and not being able to place that battle and how it conflicts with what you're telling me versus what you're showing me. Kristen Cole stabbing that board through the head and stopping this close to Rhaenyra's face. And then Daemon not being immediately killed by those archers was pretty implausible. And one of those things that's a little bit difficult for me to just kind of write off. But again, solid episode. I love this show because Game of Thrones and this show are one of the very few shows where it's like every week I'm sitting there thinking about what I just saw and anticipating the next one. So looking forward to episode 4. I know I said last week I felt like, and I just gave it as an example, like, okay, 3 episodes and they're going to jump to adulthood and we're going to get to the rest of the story. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be necessarily 4 episodes, but I think we're very close to getting to a point where we're going to jump way ahead in time to when Rhaenyra and Alicent are adults. And then it's going to be real interesting to see how Aegon, assuming Aegon continues to live, how he's going to factor into this as well. Like, is Aegon going to get to be 13, 14, 16, I don't know, however old, and be like, yo, I need to be heir. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what y'all talk about, but I need to be heir. Like, is that going to become a thing? So, that's all I got. I will see you guys next week. Let me know what you thought in the comments. And I'll see you guys next week for episode 4. Peace.